Beautiful, choir, beautiful. Thank you. Well, a good morning again. Paul, do you mind lowering that screen for us? Thank you, Paul. While I was doing that, I'll welcome you to our sermon today. Barb has been taking us through a sermon series on the parables of Jesus. And she's been taking us through the parables of Jesus through a book called The Enigmatic Parables of a Controversial Rabbi by A.J. Levine. And our parable today is actually rather simple. It comes to us in just one verse, an incredibly short story, and it reads like this. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. And covenant. If that's not the most powerful verse you've heard this week, you're wrong. This verse is so ripe for interpretation, imagination, and expectation. And this parable reminds me so much of a scene from a TV show called Arrested Development. Have any of you seen that TV show, Arrested Development? If you haven't seen it, Arrested Development is a show that centers around a dad and his son. And the two of them are basically trying to escape their family. Their family is full of wild and wacky characters who kind of like drag them down into chaos. I'm sure none of us can relate. But there's one particularly really wild one named Job. And Job is a magician, but a really bad magician. And Job knows that one of the most famous tricks you can do is pull a pigeon out of midair and it flies and people clap and applaud. So Job goes to a pet store to grab a pigeon and unfortunately, immediately after buying the pigeon, kills the pigeon. So now Job has a dead pigeon. And instead of maybe burying it or throwing it away, he puts it in a bag, rolls up the bag, puts it in their refrigerator with a note that says, "Dead pigeon, do not eat." So the dad of Arrested Development goes to grab something from the fridge. He sees the bag. He sees the note. And unbelieving what's in the bag, he opens it up, looks inside, and he goes, "Well, I don't know what I expected." The bag told him exactly what to expect. He just thought it was so unbelievable that he needed to look into the bag himself. And I think of this scene because our parable is all about great expectations. You see, what we may be missing from this parable is that this one comes right after the parable of the mustard seed, and it carries a similar value. You see, what we may be missing in this process of the parable is we have a woman who has mixed in yeast to 3 measures of flour until it becomes dough. 3 measures of flour until it becomes dough. Robbie, I'm going to need you in a second. When I originally read that, I was like, easy. 3 measures of flour, right? Probably like a cup of flour. Probably like 3 cups of flour, you make dough. That makes sense. That's like manageable, right? Well, that's not what 3 measures means. 3 measures, according to A.J. Levine, is 40 to 60 pounds of flour. And now here's my fear, church. Here's my fear. My fear is that we just heard that, but we haven't visualized it. So real quick, my expectations, 1 cup. Here we go. All right, Robbie, just to make things as easy as possible, Robbie's going to be helping me with this demonstration. We're going to get 40 to 60 pounds of flour, Robbie. All right? Lay it on me. Here we go. All right, you got 10, 20. Don't even worry about me, Robbie. I got this. Easy. This is like light work, church. Don't even worry about it. All right. 25, 30. Just find a spot to stack it at this point. 35. Okay, it's getting a little heavy. I got to be honest. I have been going to the gym, though, so, you know, this demonstration is a little less difficult. What did I say we were at? 35? Okay, cool. Thanks, Robbie. I appreciate it. 40.
You want another arm?
Nope. 45. Just a second on here. 50. Robbie, just like a little faster would be awesome. Just like slightly faster. Yeah. It's cool. 55. You got it. One more. 60. This is 3 measures of flour. All right, Robbie, help me. Help me, Robbie. Oh, my goodness. All right. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Oh. All right. Oh. All right. So 3 measures of flour is a little bit more than 3 cups. Oh, gosh. Woo. I'll leave those right there. Robbie, we can leave those there. Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate it. Thank you for bearing with me. The amount given in that parable is a wild amount of flour. It's hyperbole. The parable is saying, look at what the kingdom of God can produce. AJ writes that the dough would be far too much to need on this woman's own, and that the yield would be far too much for one person to consume. I'm going to be breathing pretty hard during this sermon, I guess. This is a parable about wild abundance. And this parable is asking, well, what did you expect? And in that, this parable poses a really interesting question. What do we expect from the kingdom? Do we expect that it will actually produce what Matthew testifies it'll produce? You know, the most difficult part about expectations is that we've all been let down by having high expectations, right? I mean, who hasn't gone to some family event, party, movie, and come away disappointed because the thing we were hoping for didn't happen? The reality of our circumstances didn't meet our expectations of what we wanted to happen. Poet Sylvia Plath writes this: if you expect nothing from somebody, you are never disappointed. And I find that this is generally a principle people live by. And I wonder why. Maybe it's because we're tired of being hurt. Maybe we've experienced just enough failure on a certain task that hoping for something better just isn't in the cards. And you know, all throughout college, I interned at different churches. And one church I interned at, they ran a program called Impact Week. And the general idea of Impact Week was this: what if we took Jesus' greatest command seriously or even literally? And Jesus' greatest commands are this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And structurally, here's what that looked like. We would go door knocking into our neighborhood, but with no strings attached. And here's what I mean by that. We'd ask our immediate geographic neighbors from the church what kind of service they need to have done around their lawn or their house, and we'd do it for free. We didn't expect them to give to the church, and we didn't expect our neighbors to become members of the church afterwards. And the church I was at had been doing this project for about 8 years, which is a fairly long time. And what I experienced from doing Impact Week was pretty astonishing. Because I just told you, we all went door knocking, which is famously the most infamous activity a church or a people could do. Right? We think of Jehovah's Witness. We think of Mormons coming to our door, bothering our evenings. And I think this video here kind of sums it up pretty well. Paul, if you want to cue that up. Still catching my breath.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Do you have time to talk about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Hey, don't run from the Lord. Where are you going? Excuse me, sir.
I don't know about you, but I am like that pig, all right? If anyone is trying to talk to me, especially a stranger, I am running as far and fast away as I can. And personally, I've had some terrible experiences door knocking, because this wasn't my first one. In high school, we used to go door knocking in Maine, where we used to do mission trips. And one door we knocked at, I heard a very masculine yelling, the sound of a shotgun pump, and then storming to the door, and we got out of there. My second bad experience is my friend and I approached a door only to be greeted by a very kind woman into her 90s who decided to greet us at the door as naked as the day she was born. We were looking high into the sky during that conversation. So I didn't have high expectations for this door-knocking thing we were going to be doing in Houston, Texas. And here's what I found. Sorry, I'm just thinking about this. After 8 years of this church taking only a week out of their year to serve their immediate community, the community expected the church to show up. The first house I went to, I barely got through my script. I went, "Hi, I'm Alex Sergio. I'm from so-and-so church. This is Impact Week. And she stopped me, and she said, "You're from the church." She goes, "I've been waiting for you." She then handed me this list of things that she needed to be done. The next, I found that there was this older woman in the community who didn't have a lot of family and a lot of friends. And the teens of the church got to know her through Impact Week. And without being instructed by their youth minister, by the head pastor of the church, by any older adult, they would go to her house outside of Impact Week to check in on her, to mow her lawn, to do these types of things. And here's the kicker, Covenant. The things I saw, felt, and were shocking to me. There was such a positive reception from everyone in the neighborhood about what this church was doing. But they shouldn't have been. Because Matthew wrote it on the bag. He wrote the proverbial dead pigeon, "Do not eat." Well, okay, more accurately, Matthew wrote, God's kingdom will cause unprecedented growth. In my expectations from my past experiences with churches, I was shocked to find what I did. And I can imagine Jesus saying, "Well, what did you think would happen?" That when the kingdom of God is mixed into the dough, the yield is going to be more than we expect. And maybe our expectations get broken because we set them in the wrong place. Maybe it's not the kingdom failing us, but us failing to see what the kingdom can look like. What I found at the church was a church that didn't look at its neighbors as a business to be cashed in on. That if we do something for you, then you need to donate to our church, or you need to put in X amount of years as a member. That in order for it to be worth it for us to do this quote-unquote kingdom work, we need to get something out of it. When we haven't set our expectations in the right place, they're going to be broken 10 out of 10 times, right? This is like number one rule of marriage counseling. Between the two partners, they need to have similar expectations of someone is going to be radically disappointed. And if the goal of Impact Week was numerical butts in the pews, this event would have been a giant failure. But here's where they set their expectation. The church asked, what does it mean to love God and love our neighbors as ourselves? What does the love of God and neighbor compel me to do for my neighbor? And the fruit of that labor was beautiful. It truly defied societal expectation of what might be expected from a church. And from our little verse today, I'm drawn in two places. One, I want all of us to ask ourselves this morning, what do we expect from the kingdom of God? Do we expect anything? Do we expect that when we act as ambassadors on behalf of that kingdom, that something will happen? Or do we keep our expectations so low that we can never feel disappointed? That maybe in an effort to protect ourselves, we miss the yeast waiting to be mixed in with the dough. And two, today is World Communion Day. Today, as we take communion together, World Communion Day calls us to look beyond just our church. Because the kingdom of God is bigger than this building, the brick and mortar. The kingdom of God is not locked down into one place. It's a people spread across world, across denominations, across seas, across language barriers. That if we actually were to see the kingdom of God here on earth, we might be shocked, but we shouldn't be. And maybe the shock just means we need to reset our expectations. As we partake of the elements today, church, the bread and the cup. Number one, think of the thousands of places and people that are unified in doing the same action with us. And two, ask yourself, what do you expect of God's kingdom? Because the gospel, according to Matthew, is that the kingdom is like yeast in 40 to 60 pounds of flour. It's not a matter of if, but when and how it yields incredible growth.